much indeed for that polite applause. Good evening and welcome to the show. We got two great guests for you tonight. Let us know. As always, you can text, you can email, you can Facebook, and, well, you can tweet as well. All the details are right here, look, on the screen. Now, I've got a little tweet for you because it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest this evening. He is a legendary TV producer, for many years the head of light entertainment at Granada, Johnny Hamp.
Oh, lovely to see you.
Yeah. Johnny, it's really fantastic to see you on the programme, looking so fit and well. And you are the man who gave the Beatles their first TV break.
Yes, that was going back to 1962.
Yeah.
And they did about... I was producing a programme called Scene at 6:30, which was the local Granada programme, and a sort of magazine programme. And for the whole of 63, they came in to plug every record. Yeah, so brilliant times.
Fantastic. One of your many claims to fame. I think also that you brought Woody Allen over to this country.
Yes, we did a special with Woody Allen. It's funny, really, because I'd heard about just made a programme with Burt Bacharach, the Bacharach Sound, and we were talking about this American comic, and he said that he's brilliant, you know. So I whipped across to Paris because he was over there shooting a film called What's New Pussycat.
Yeah.
And had a chat with him, and he came over and did a one-hour special, the Woody Allen Show, which apparently is the only stand-up tape, apart from about 2-minute spot on a Dusty Springfield show, that exists. So, you know, I was very lucky, a bit of a scoop at the time.
Is that right? Now, as I mentioned on the intro, you're a legendary television producer, head of light entertainment at Granada. But I think there's always been a bit of a performer in there as well, hasn't there?
Well, I suppose, yeah, it has. It's an old ham in me, I suppose, coming out. But my dad was a magician, a semi-pro magician.
He was the great Hampo, wasn't he?
The great Hampo, yeah. Yes. And we're going back now to pre-war days, you know, and just during the war period. And he would go and do concerts all over the place and appeared, and I used to be his stooge. I was stooged, I'd be the little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy in the audience that would place himself in exactly the right spot to rush up on the stage when the magician asked for a volunteer, and tell him there's no egg in the bag and that sort of thing. So I was, that was my sort of showbiz start, I suppose, in a way. And then when I was a teenager, I wanted to do an act of my own, so I used to do a Danny Kaye impression. I was about 17, I suppose, at the time. Of course, Danny Kaye was the biggest thing since sliced bread at that time, you know. So I would mime to this Danny Kaye record. My wife, or was my girlfriend at the time, and my mum, entered me for a Brian Mickey talent contest at the Granada Sutton, the cinema. And I won it, and got 20 quid. And Brian Mickey, I think he fancied me because he was gay. And he said, would you like, we're doing the same contest at, I think it was Leytonstone the following week. We have lots of singers that sing Bless This House and so, but we want novelty acts. And he said, would you come across and do the contest there? So, you know, I was pleased about that. I went across that and I won that, and I won another 20 quid. But in the meantime, during that week, he said, we're doing yet another one in Kent, at Welling. Do you want to come and enter for that? So I went to that and I won that. So that was, that was my performing days. And then he offered me a tour of the Brian Mickey Discovery shows. The most wonderful acts of 1949, you know, the new faces. And I toured for about 6 or 7 months with that, all around the Granada theatre circuit. And unfortunately, I mean, I was working at Pathy Pictures as a messenger boy before that, but of course this decided me to turn pro, because at Pathy Pictures I think I was earning £2, 10 shillings a week, and he was paying me 12 quid. So, and anyway, I was due to go in the Air Force. I knew I had to.
National service.
Yeah, do my national service when I was 18. So I thought, what the hell? I gave up the job at Pathy and carried on touring.
But subsequently, you were sidetracked from performing because you joined Granada as a cinema manager. And I know one of the people you worked with was Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, well, after I'd finished at the Air Force, I was demobbed with one of those horrible suits.
Yeah, demob suits.
Boots, yeah. I decided that like, variety wasn't the thing to go back to. I'd just done 2 years in the Air Force and variety was dying. Although I really wanted to do that, and I thought, well, I'd better get a proper job. So I thought I'd go to those nice people at Granada because I'd done the tour as a performer. And they gave me a job as an assistant to the assistant manager of the cinema at Kingston in Surrey. So I was there a little while, and eventually I was transferred to the flagship, the big Granada Tooting.
Yeah.
And still as assistant to the assistant manager. And I've been a Sinatra fan since I was evacuated. The lad that was in the family up there, Mrs. Revell's son, he was Sinatra mad, and he convinced me that Bing Crosby wasn't that great, and Frank, this new guy was, you know. So, and directly I got to this Granada at Tooting, I discovered that there was a Sunday concert with starring Frank Sinatra, and that my job would be to host him, make certain he had clean towels in the dressing room, all that sort of thing, you know, that he was well looked after. And then to my horror, they said, the other part of your job on concerts is to go up in the circle and operate the sound system.
Wow.
So there's me operating a sound system for, you know, my idol, yeah.
It wasn't the greatest time in his career, was it? He did. I don't think he filled the theatre.
No, he was a bit on the skids. We're talking about 1953.
So
now.
before he had From Here to Eternity and the big comeback, yeah.
And he'd been, I'd been in trouble with the press. He punched an Australian journalist in the face, and there was a lot of scandal about his marriage breaking up with Ava Gardner.
He was good to you, wasn't he? Good to you.
What?
He was good to you. He liked you, got on well with you.
But, I mean, to my surprise, I couldn't believe it. Only 150 people turned up.
Incredible.
For the show, you know, which was, you know, which is unbelievable. But there's a sequel to that too, because when they did This Is Your Life, Michael Aspel got this little story out of me of only 150 people turning up.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, we've been in touch with Mr. Sinatra, and he holds you entirely responsible for the bad business on that night.
Lovely. We'll talk more about This Is Your Life a little bit later on, but you were headhunted by Granada Television from working in the theatres. That was a fabulous time to work at Granada back in the 60s. You were working with people like Michael Parkinson, Bill Grundy. What was that time like for you?
Oh, it was brilliant. I mean, I worked with Granada Theatres and eventually produced stage shows, and I was in charge of publicity. And then, as you say, I made a bit of a transfer to Granada Television, and the first programme we did was Seen at 6:30, which was, as I said, the local magazine programme, and Bill Grundy was one of the link men, and so was Parky, Mike Scott, you know, but it was a great time. And Parkinson actually says that it was his best, he said this recently, that it's the best period he ever had, because, and it was good for me because producing shows for Granada Theatres, I knew all the pop people because I'd book them in, all the, you know, the Marty Wilds and the Cliff Richards and all the Americans, the Buddy Hollies, the Everly Brothers and all that. So when I was, my job at Scene at 6:30 was to book in each night 1 or 2 pop people, recording artists or light entertainment people. And Parky's job and Grundy's, they were to produce the current affairs. But of course, for me, it's wonderful. In 1963, that was the height of the Beatles. It was the height of Jerry and the Pacemakers, Freddie and the Dreamers, the whole lot caboose.
Well, it was Mersey Beat, but also there were very big groups coming out of Manchester where you were based. There were people like the Hollies,
oh, sure.
Herman's Hermits, and all the others. Great time.
Well, Herman's Hermits, so that's one. They had a manager who sent me a letter, and I can remember it. I've probably still got it somewhere, but it said, Herman and his Hermits across the top, melodies of the moment down the side, like that. So
nobody would describe them now as melodies, would they? Really, it was extraordinary.
But he wrote me this letter, and I sort of ignored it at the time. But we were in the pub, the local pub, and this manager, Harvey Lisberg, he found me out. He came and talked to me and said, I wrote you this letter about this group. And I said, yeah, I remember it. It's great. He said, well, they're appearing tonight at the Plaza Ballroom in Manchester. Would you come and see them? To his surprise, I said, yes, okay, let's go. So we went. I was knocked out. They were really so good. And I actually said to Harvey, well, bring them in the studio tomorrow. We'll put them on the air tomorrow. Well, I had a phone call about 9:30 the next morning saying, did you really mean it? Were you drunk? They said, of course, all the boys have got day jobs. And they want to know if it's serious. Anyway, they came in. They were one of the few groups that actually performed live. I mean, nearly everything in those days was miming to records,
They were live. It was Peter Noone, of course, was the lead singer, and he had appeared in Coronation Street, which was also done at, at Granada.
But they actually, I was talking to Carl Green, who was the bassist there just recently, and I said, how many programs did you do before you made a record, for me? And he said, we did 3 live before,
before the record.
Yeah, I tried to send the tape to, I think it was somebody at EMI who turned them down. And of course, then Mickey Mouse got them. And I mean, Peter Noone is still working. I'm in touch with him now.
In America, is he?
Oh, he's in America, and he's doing concerts all over the place,
Now, Johnny, it was the time of the great TV chairman. ATV had Lou Grade, Granada had Sidney Bernstein. Tell us why he was such a great man.
Well, I mean, Sidney Bernstein was the boss, and he was charismatic. I mean, he'd done everything. His father owned 2 cinemas in the East End just years and years ago, even in the silent days. And so Sidney, the eldest brother, he'd torn tickets, he'd shown people to their seats, he'd been right through the whole thing. So when he built these wonderful cinemas, which the Granadas were, I mean, I think the Tooting one, there's still a, what they call it, preservation order on the inside. They're brilliant, although it's a bingo hall, they can't touch it. And he was so charismatic. And Granada cinema managers, I've seen them actually shaking like when they know they've got a visit from the cost, because he just could find fault, but legitimate fault with everything. Anything that was wrong, he'd find it, But he was a great boss because he'd say, particularly in television, and he'd come up with an idea, and he'd say, have a go. He said, we're not going to sack you if it doesn't work. Wonderful attitude.
Do you think that attention to detail was part of his key?
Well, he did. He had a phobia about certain things. Like, I remember Marion Ryan wearing a big gross earrings, as he called them, not to wear those again.
He said, he would say that, would he, to artists? Don't wear those big earrings.
He wouldn't say that.
Oh.
It'd be our job to do that. We'd do it.
That was, of course, on Spot the Tune.
Yeah.
Which he presented for a long time, which you produced that, did you?
That was my first production, 1961. Yeah. Spot the Tune. And I believe you had Pete Murray on recently.
We did, yeah.
Well, I remember I inherited it. Sidney rang one day in my office and he said, all I'd done really at that point was go around the studios in Manchester. So I didn't know much about television, really. And he said, we're having trouble with the producer of Spot the Tune. And he said, you know about music. Will you get down to the studio? I didn't say, will you? He said, get down to the studio and produce tonight's show. Well, it was live, going out to 6 million people, you know. Yes. Of course, it'd all been rehearsed anyway. So I did the last 2 programmes of that series. Then when it came back a couple of months later, I changed everything. I got rid of it.
And you made Pete Murray the...
I made Pete Murray the co-host with Marion.
Good.
Yeah.
That was a good move. Now, we're going to take a quick break, but before that, you went on to become the head of light entertainment at Granada. So I'm just going to imagine during the break, you're now sitting behind the desk and you're thinking to yourself, what are going to be the new shows that I'm going to treat everybody to? So we'll come back and we'll find out. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back. Glad you stayed with us, and it's well worth it because my guest today is Johnny Hamp, former head of light entertainment at Granada Television. So, Johnny, there you are. You've got the job. You're sitting behind the desk, and you think to yourself, right, what's going to be the big show?
Well, you're talking about when I became head of entertainment, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. I've been producing cinema with Michael Parkinson, and we used to go to these clubs, you know, around Manchester, and there were hundreds of them, 400 clubs in the Manchester area. And it was usually to see a top of the bill, a Shirley Bassey, a Bruce Forsyth. But I noticed that there was always a compere come comedian, obviously everywhere you went, you know. And I thought it might be a great idea to get some of those into the studio and see what happens. So I got 30 comics spread over 3 nights, and they all did 10 minutes each, and I recorded a lot of tape and went away and edited up a pilot show, which became The Comedians. But it was funny, really, because a new show, and being a young producer, I had to show it to the bosses before they would say yes or no. So we had a little viewing room, and there was Sidney Bernstein, Cecil Bernstein, who were the 2 bosses, and Sir Dennis Foreman, who was the programme controller at that time. And so we're watching the playback of this new show I'd invented. And the first gag that comes up, because if people are too young to remember it, it was a very fast cut, one gag after another from different comedians. And up came the first gag, and they were sitting watching this in the viewing room, and the first one was Frank Carson. And they did the gag about your brother Sammy, who has 2 wooden legs. He said it was out fire watching when the building was caught on fire. He said the brigade came out, they saved the building, but your brother Sammy was burnt to the ground. They said, they said the insurance company wouldn't pay out because they said he didn't have a leg to stand up. So, and the second gag comes on, it's Bernhard Manning. And Bernhard said, did you hear about the Jewish Santa Claus? He said, he came down the chimney and said to the kids, do you want to buy some toys? And then Dougie Brown came on, and the next gag was Dougie Brown. And he did the gag, he said, a fella goes into a pet shop and says, I want to buy a parrot. And the fella behind the bar says, the counter says, how much do you want to pay? He said, about £4. He said, well, that one's a good one. He said, well, can it talk? And the parrot says, bloody sight better than you 2. But then, of course, I realised Sidney and Cecil were both Jewish.
Yes.
Cecil, as you well know, had a terrible stammer.
Yeah.
And Sir Dennis Foreman actually had a wooden leg.
So it went down well with the Granada board.
I mean, talk about political correctness, but they liked it, and of course, I mean, we ran for 15 years, really, and And we had a stage version at the London Palladium, which ran for 5.5, 6 months. Summer shows at Blackpool and Yarmouth, and a record and a book. And, you know.
Fantastic success.
Well, you were talking about bosses just now, and I remember Lou Gray coming up to me. He said, I'll offer you. He said, it's the best show business exercise I've seen. He said, I'll offer you twice what Bernstein offers you.
Wow.
You know.
To take it to ATV.
Wouldn't work for him. Yeah.
No. Now, tell us about some of the comics. I mean, Bernhard Manning, we'd love to know about him. What was he like, Bernhard?
Well, Bernhard, I mean, everybody told me that Bernhard Manning was, because I didn't know him very well. I'd seen his act at the clubs, and he wasn't a big star. Well, he wasn't well known outside the Manchester area. But they said, oh, he's much too blue for television. You never use him. And Bernhard said to me, he said, come out with me one night. And we went to it was a Catholic club. We went to a British Legion club. We went to the Posh Cabaret Club and a gay club in the same night. And he changed the material every time. And of course, as a Catholic club, it was perfect material for television, you know. But a great character. I loved him.
Frank Carson?
Well, Frank I'd known longer than any of the comedians. So I first saw him in Ballyshannon Opera House in the west coast of Ireland. And the Ballyshannon Opera House was a big tin hut with grass growing out of the gutters and all that. And my contact was Mr. Frank Carson, who I presumed was a manager or something. Well, I went to the ticket office, and the fellow selling the tickets said, how many tickets you want? You know, it was Frank Carson selling the tickets. And he said, I'm a comedian. He said, and he said, I hope you stay and see my act. And I said, well, yeah, fine. He said, but I might not be doing it tonight if it rains. He said, well, of course. He said, the rain makes so much noise on the corrugated roof, and we don't have microphones.
That's the way you tell them.
That's the way you tell them.
That's the way you tell them.
That's when I was with Granada Theatres, and I was booking stage shows, and I brought him over with the singing housewife, Bridie Gallagher, to appear at the Met Edgware Road. And of course, we became great friends. That was in the 50s. So by the time 1970 came, he was one of the first ones that I went for the comedians.
Now, how do you follow a show like The Comedians? Well, you followed it with the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Social Club.
Yeah.
And when I think of that, I think, of course, of Colin Crompton, who was the club chairman, wasn't he?
Yes. It's funny how the Wheel Tappers started with, really, because we had two stage shows going on, the comedians, one in Liverpool, in Blackpool, and one at the London Palladium. And of course, you couldn't put, there were 6 comedians in each of them, and you couldn't put 6 stand-up comics on at the London Palladium. They wanted a big production. So I had to devise little sequences, like there was a minstrel sequence they all took part in. There was an old-time music hall sequence. And the Blackpool show, I thought the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Social Club, I mean, it's an expression that was used generally when a comic was saying, oh, I worked some, that. And all the 6, Colin Crompton was the chairman, and the other 5 comedians did rotten acts, lousy acts, you know, the juggler that dropped everything and all that, and the magicians whose tricks went wrong. And I was watching it one night when we transferred to Yarmouth the next year, and I thought this really might make a television programme, you know. So that's how it all came about. Yeah,
brilliant. Now you mentioned earlier This Is Your Life, and Michael Aspel pounced on you with the big red book. Tell us how that was set up. How did it happen?
Well, I do a bit of painting. I love it. It was very relaxing, and but over the years I've doodled on my desk blotters, and someone said they're works of art, and I've got about 200 of them. They're full, they're phone numbers, but there's all sorts of stuff. So a guy organised an exhibition at a big hotel in Manchester, Victoria and Albert, and so my wife would get funny phone calls on a Wednesday morning or something. And I'd think, because I said, look, I can't, I'm too close to this exhibition of my doodles, you know, I can't be involved. So you handle it to my wife. So she get these funny phone calls, and I think it's to do with the exhibition. And of course, opening day of the exhibition, it's funny, I was in the hotel and I saw Michael Aspel in the morning. No surprise, because I knew he was coming up to Manchester, as they did, the team, to do maybe 3 or 4, a couple of Coronation Street people and someone else, you know. And I said, hello, Michael. Of course, in the afternoon, all the comedians were there. No, they weren't there. I'd asked them to come to give a bit of publicity to this exhibition with doodles. And the door, they hadn't appeared. I thought, they'd never let me down, particularly Bernhard and Frank, you know. And the door burst open and all these people came in, all the comedians came in. I didn't recognise Aspel to start with. You see 6, 7 familiar faces, and you think, you know everybody. And of course, he's prodding me in. This is your life. No, it wasn't Eamon, was it?
No, it's Michael.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah.
But a great honour. Now,
yeah, it was
I've been reading your book, which you very kindly sent me, and you signed it as well, called "It Beats Working for a Living." This is your life story, and I started off having a few chuckles, and by the time I got about halfway through, the chuckles had turned into belly laughs. It's so funny, the stories that you've got down the years.
That's nice. Very kind of it, yeah.
And you've had a fantastic career.
Yeah, it's pretty. Well, what it says on the tin is what it is. It beats working for a living. We've had so many laughs. I've had a great time.
Well, I'm going to quote something on the back here that Michael Parkinson said about you. He said, "My working days with Johnny, seen at 6:30 cinema, were the happiest of my career. I look back on those Granada days as the best time I ever had, and I count myself a lucky man to have worked with a man as talented, funny, and good-natured as Johnny Hamp."
Right, so we've been great mates for years, and people sometimes ask me who I didn't get on with, and I find it very hard to think of anybody that I really didn't get on with.
Do you think I mean, obviously we're having a good time now, but we think we had the best days? I mean, was that the most fun days of television?
I've had several periods. I mean, my days in the theatre were great, and then the 60s in Manchester were absolutely superb.
Yeah.
And then cinema, I produced cinema, and I met like how many Jack Nicholson, Gene Kelly, or hundreds of films. I had great periods, and then I did the International Pop Proms with Les Reed, and and then the comedians. Yeah. You know, I find it very hard to pick one thing. Oh, this year it celebrates 50 years of 3 great shows I really thought were great that I produced, and that's the Bacharach Sound, and Woody Allen, and the music of Lennon McCartney, which and there's a bit on. I don't know whether the Beatles really wanted to do it or not. I think probably George was getting a bit upset that I was doing Lennon and McCartney. But the night before we recorded the show, there was the director and I, Phil Carson, we'd been out for the night and we'd had a good dinner and plenty of wine, and came to he was staying with me, and we down the whiskey, early night, midnight, let's go to bed. So we went to bed, because big show tomorrow, you know. 12, just after 12, the phone rings and my wife V answers it. She says, "It's John Lennon." So, where, he said, "Johnny," I said, "Yes." Said, and I'm a bit, how's your father? You know, he said, "You're coming out to play." I said, "John, I'm in no state to drive 12 miles back into Manchester, you know." He said, "Well, where's the action?" He said, so I said, "Well, it's the phonograph. That's to go over to the disco, the phonograph." And I gave him directions. Yeah. And fine, hung up. In the morning, my wife said, "You shouldn't have said that to John Lennon. I mean, he was the most famous man in the world at that time." Yeah. I said, "Well, all I told him was to go to the phonograph." And she said, "Yes, but," she said, You said, if you have any trouble getting in with the bouncers, just mention my name.
Johnny Hamp, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. So now when I know what to do, wherever I go, I mention your name.
Just mention my name.
And what a fantastic guest. And we got another terrific guest after the little break that we're going to have right now, because we're coming back with a lady who has sold 1 million. Don't go away. Very much indeed. Time to meet my final guest on the program today, a lady who has sold millions of records around the world. It's the lovely Judy Rogers.
Okay, lovely to be here.
And what about that song, The Wedding? What a fantastic song. That song has sold millions of copies around
I
the
know,
world.
it's unbelievable. It's something like 15 million, records, and it doesn't really ever die. It just keeps going on.
It does. It was #1 in Australia, and of course since then you've been over there and played there many times.
24 times, done 24 tours of Australia. Yeah, great country.
It was a hit in America?
Yes, it was in America, and Far East, well, everywhere, in the most peculiar places I've been to, Indonesia and Bangkok, all those. It was a hit everywhere.
It was an international hit. Now, I wonder, you wouldn't know this statistic, but it occurs to me, I wonder how many weddings it's been played at.
Enormous amount. I mean, even I've been booked to do a wedding, sing it in the church and that. And it almost became like an anthem, and particularly in Ireland. I mean, everyone got married to that song in Ireland.
How many times have you sung it?
Do you know what? I couldn't count. I mean, because you have to include it in every show you do. And so, I mean, all the millions of shows that I've done, I've had to put that in. And it's amazing.
They're all going, sing the wedding.
Yeah. Hold on a minute.
Where did the song come from? Was it a foreign song, was it?
Yeah. The composer was a guy called Joaquin Prieto from South America. Right. And apparently it had been recorded 6 or 7 times before. And then all of a sudden, I'd had my first record, It's Magic. I did the old Doris Day thing, It's Magic. And I went around all the television companies, and I did beat room for a producer you may have known, Barry Langford. And he sent The Wedding to my A&R man, Johnny Franz, and said, I think this would be good for Julie. So I did it, and that was it.
One thing I can think of was that suddenly you were on every television show.
Absolutely. Well, you know, David, I mean, you could be on television 5 or 6 times a week. There were so many musical shows then. Yeah. And because I was doing every one of them. And broadcasting in the morning, cabaret at night. I mean, it was just an absolute whirlwind, unbelievable.
I remember you, in fact, us appearing together on Doddy's Music Box, which was done from Didsbury, or Diddy Didsbury, as he called it.
That's right.
And you were one of the guests on it. It was Ken Dodd doing sketches, and then there were guest singers. There were people like Matt Monroe, Dusty Springfield, and your good self.
That's right. Yeah. And I remember standing at the back when Ken was doing it, waiting. You used to do a finale, and we had to all appear on the finale, and we'd be looking at our watches like this. It would be another half an hour, and eventually the crew used to go home before it used to go on.
I know. Well, Ken's still doing that now, and it's incredible.
He's an amazing man.
He's an amazing man, well into his 80s.
Yes.
He does 5-hour shows.
Yeah, incredible. What a brain.
Yes, to retain all that material. And not repeat anything.
No,
it was phenomenal.
It's just extraordinary.
Now, coming back to you, you'd had a wonderful grounding because you started out as a singer with Teddy Foster.
I did. I started, and I'd never sung before professionally, and I was thrown into this big 22-piece orchestra. And it was such great experience because I was very, very shy. I could sing, but I was shy, And Ted had all new arrangements done for me, everything, to sort of make me as good as I could be. And he used to say to me, you go out and you perform. You don't just stand there, you go out and perform. Good. And, I used to, go out and do that. So I remember one night we had a concert in Butlins, Filey, and he gave me this song for Mama, the big Connie Francis hit. Yeah. And he said, go out and do that. And the first night I did it, and I just sang, and it was fine. And then he said to me, I'm going to take that away from you, that song. I said, why? He said, because you're not performing it. You go out and sell it. Well, I went out in such a temper. I pulled the place down, you know.
Yeah.
But it's experience.
Well, a lot of people likened you two together to Louis Prima and Keely Smith.
Well, David, that was our grounding. I mean, I first did, when I first started, when we, Teddy gave up the orchestra, and we did a double act. And we did a lot of work in Germany. And of course, we used to do the Louis Prima, Keely Smith, which was so popular.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ted played the trumpet as well, and he had that very husky voice. And we were booked time and time again to the same places, you know, and it was very, very successful.
They were fantastic. I mean, Louis Prima and Keely Smith, I've got a DVD at home of them. I think it's at Lake Tahoe. And in cabaret, they were just absolutely sensational. And you think of the songs, that Old Black Magic, of course, would be one.
Absolutely.
What were the other ones you did?
Well, we did everything. Nothing's Too Good for My Baby.
Yeah.
Doodle-doodle-doo, doodle-doodle-doo. Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous songs.
And what was it? He did The Sheik of Araby. That was another one of his numbers. And,
that's right. All of those songs. Because they were great entertainment songs, you know. I mean, they had a message. They were terrific.
Yeah. Who was the great guy in the band? Sam Butera, was
Sam
it?
Butera, yeah.
Yeah.
He was on sax, yeah.
Yeah.
Terrific.
So-
Each of those musicians were sensational. Though.
I was going to say, if you sounded like them, then that must have been some show. And you took it a lot to Germany. You took it to the continent.
All over Germany, Italy, to all the American bases there, NATO, everywhere. You know, we went. So very, very successful.
Now, in your career, obviously, you've worked all over the world. I mean, we said you had an international hit. So tell us about some of the exotic places that... did you go to places like Hong Kong and Singapore?
Oh, many times, yes. I did Hong Kong. I must have done it about 4 times at the Eagle's Nest, the Hilton Eagle's Nest in Hong Kong. And I used to do a month at a time there. Also Bangkok. It was a funny thing. I was in Australia, and I had a message from Bangkok, from my recording company there, to say, you've got a #1 here called Almost Close to You. Do you think you could stop off on the way back and do some television? So I said, yeah, fine. So when I get back there, I said to the manager, the recording manager that met me, I said, well, you know, how many have I sold here? He said, 100. I said, but it's #1. He said, yes, I know. He said, but they're all pirated. So I said, well, who does the pirates? He said, I do. And that was it. Quite open about it.
Yeah. Oh, dear. In your career, what would you say were the best gigs that you did, the best venues that you played?
Well, I mean, I think the most memorable is when you do your first Palladium, Sunday night at London Palladium, because, I mean, it was so iconic in those days, and you thought, if I do that, that's it, you know.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I will never forget. But I mean, I used to love the Talk of the Town. I played the Talk of the Town 11 times. And that was the most wonderful venue. People could have supper there, they could dance, see a review, and then the star would come on. It was just phenomenal.
I miss those clubs, don't you?
I do, too.
I mean, I love them. I remember the days when you had Scampi in the basket. It was always Scampi in the basket.
That's right,
or chicken in the basket.
Oh, absolutely.
But it didn't matter because you had the most wonderful acts, whether they were singers or they were comedians, and it was a night out. And you must have played all those clubs, places like Caesar's Palace, Talk of the Town.
Oh, absolutely, and Batley and all the northern clubs. I mean, the Night Out Birmingham and...
Yeah.
I mean, they were phenomenal, those clubs. I mean, and you were doing them week after week.
Yes.
I mean, I used to get home like early Sunday morning, and when I saw Watford Gap, I used to say, hallelujah, I'm nearly home, you know.
Theatrical
Fantastic.
digs, I suppose, you were staying in?
Yeah.
Yes. That's why so many...
I always stayed in a hotel.
Oh, hotels.
I had to.
You did?
I could never
like the
stay in a gig, no. It was always a hotel.
A lot of people did, of course, and
yeah, they did.
A lot of other people in the business took up golf as well because they'd be there, you know, all
day
week.
long.
They get bored during the day.
It was very boring.
And so a lot of people took up golf. What did you do if you were staying for a week?
Well, you know what? Whenever, you know, we always used to see around what was the local thing. I mean, we'd go to the local you know, castle that was 500 years old or
Yeah.
something. Like, we always used to go out and explore the area that we were in, because, I mean, there are some such fabulous areas. And then you go out of the town, you get into the countryside, and it's just fabulous.
Lovely. Did you do summer seasons as well? Did you do
I did
this?
summer
Yeah.
seasons, yes, I did summer seasons, and
Where do you remember playing? Do you do Great Yarmouth and Blackpool?
done all of those in
Yeah.
the one night, you know. But the funny thing is, I didn't do as many as most people, because I used to be doing most of my trips abroad, like to, you know, Hong Kong and Thailand and South Africa. I used to do a lot of that in the summers, you know. So I didn't do so many summer seasons. I did one with Norman Wisdom that I remember in Skegness. I
What
remember
was
that.
Norman like to work with?
Well, he was very particular, very, very
Was he?
particular,
Yeah.
very picky.
Was he?
Very
I mean, you were on the same show. Did you do your act or did you perform with him?
No, I did my act.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, we
So-
did out in South Africa together as well.
So what would he be picky about then?
Well, it's awful to say really, but when we did South Africa, I just had 3 #1 records there. And Norman was in that period where he was not doing films and he was in a bit of a lull.
Yeah.
So when we got there, the press had me on the front pages, and Norman got the dead needle about it, and quite rightly, because he was the star of the show.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like that, there were little things that went on.
The old showbiz story.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, sadly, Teddy Foster died,
Yes, he did.
but you remarried and
Yes,
you
I
married
did.
a man called Michael Black.
Yes.
Michael Black is one of the leading show business agents. He is the brother of Don Black,
That's
the
right.
wonderful songwriter.
Oh, fabulous.
Who's your
songwriter.
brother-in-law, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Michael is here with you today, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. I mean, he'd probably rather like me saying it, actually. But to me, he is one of the funniest people, not on stage.
He
but, you know,
is.
Is he funny at home?
He can be. He's very funny when we go out.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and he's in company. And even like if we go to Tesco's,
Yeah.
he'll always find something to make
Will he?
me laugh. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's very funny.
May I tell my favourite Michael Black
Oh,
story?
please do.
I think you probably know the one that I'm talking about. It's when he was talking about his first wife, whose name I don't know, but he said, when my marriage broke up, he said, and I was divorced from my first wife, she took me to the cleaners. He said, I thought it was going to be Sketchley's, but it turned out to be Jeeves of Belgravia.
That is a typical gag.
I
Yeah,
love
it's
that.
lovely.
Yeah, he's here today. What's it like? What's it like having Don Black as a brother-in-law? Must be wonderful.
Don is lovely. He's the sweetest, nicest person. I mean, apart from his legendary songwriting, he's just such a lovely, lovely man. He's gentle and kind, and he's gorgeous. And on my last album, I recorded about 6 or 7 of his songs, Walk Away and Born Free,
Yeah.
but not on the present album. I've
No.
done on my own.
Wonderful songs that, of course, the 2 that you mentioned, he wrote for Matt Monro.
Absolutely.
And, of course, for a long time, he was Matt's manager
Yes,
as
he
well
was.
as writing for him.
Yes.
I mean, you must have worked with Matt. What a wonderful singer he was.
I worked with Matt so many times. We did, first we used to do a lot of television together. And then we did, you know, used to meet. Funnily enough, I used to meet him. We used to do, like when he went to Australia, he'd be doing one club, and then I'd be following on and meet him the next time. You know, we did like a circle. But yeah, we did a lot together, Matt.
Yeah. He died sadly, terribly young. I think he was about 52.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Terribly sad.
Greatly-
And so
greatly missed.
unnecessary.
Yeah,
It's
unnecessary.
unnecessary, unfortunately.
Frank Sinatra paid him a great compliment when he said he was his favourite singer. What a great
Yeah,
compliment that was.
I'm sure he was as well. I mean, I've never heard a bad record of Matt. I mean,
Nor
it
have
doesn't
I.
matter what you listen to.
Yeah.
He's always fantastic.
I've got so many, almost his entire collection of records at
Have
home.
you?
Yeah, and just exactly as you say, I sometimes am sitting in the garden with the dog, and I put some Matt Monro records on, and there's not a bad note
Never,
anywhere.
never
So
a
many
bad
he
note,
recorded.
No. He was so easy,
Yeah.
and again, such a lovely, sweet personality when he sang.
Julie, I've got here with me, look, your new
Yes, the
album.
new one, yeah.
Yeah, here it is. It's called, what's it called?
Emotions.
Emotions, yeah. Now, I'm just looking at the back of it here. Of what I find very interesting is that you've actually written a lot of the songs.
Yeah, I have. I've written 9 of the tracks on there. You know, I started writing them last year because last year I celebrated 50 years in the business. Well,
Yes,
since
you did, that's right.
1964 when I had the wedding, you know. And I thought, well, I've got to do something. So we did the album. And I
Yeah.
wrote most of the songs.
Well, I didn't, you mean, I knew, of course, that you were a singer, but I didn't know, when did you start writing songs?
I've sort of written intermittently over the years, but never really cracked down on it, you know. And I thought, well, this time I'm going to really get cracking. I've often put just one song on an album, but this time I've done 9 of the 13 tracks.
Yeah. Some of them you've written with other people, and some
No.
you've written them all
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah, the lyrics and,
Wow.
and the tune, yeah.
That's a rare talent, because you often get people who can write words,
Yeah.
some can write music, but not
No, I've
that many
done a
people
lot.
can write both.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Now, I want to thank you for being a fabulous guest on the program today, and I want to finish with a quote from your brother-in-law, Don Black, which I think is wonderful. He says, "There can't be many people in the world who can say their sister-in-law is one of the greatest entertainers of her generation. I always get excited when I see Julie perform in concert or cabaret, and to quote the Nat King Cole classic, she is unforgettable. She feels songs, and that means that Judy Rogers is a songwriter's best friend."
Oh, how lovely.
Isn't
that
that lovely? And that is a compliment from Don Black.
Yeah,
So,
and it is. And every time I perform, he always comes to see the show all
fantastic.
the time.
Well, it's been a great pleasure seeing you today. Can I say here's to the next 50 years?
Please, God.
Julie Rogers, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I've so enjoyed it.
That's it for today. Thank you very much indeed to my guests on the program. Thank you to the incomparable Johnny Hamp. Yes, Johnny Hamp, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you to the lovely Judy Rogers. We'll see you next time with more great guests. Bye-bye.